What's up guys, I'm Kyther and welcome to Today in the Universe.
Today we'll take a deep dive into the fascinating world of fire ants. Fire ants are pretty famous, or should I say infamous, because they have pretty much invaded all of the world's tropical and subtropical countries. It's hard to find a tropical place in the world that hasn't been conquered by these ladies. And that's a quote by Ants Canada. Fire ant is a common name for any ant belonging to the genus Solenopsis, and is one of the better known species of ants. Fire ants are interesting because of how they reproduce and mature, their intricate social network, their fierce predatory instincts, and their mastery of water and architecture. The most widespread strains of fire ants are the Solenopsis Geminata, or tropical fire ants, and the Solenopsis invicta, or red imported fire ants, which is abbreviated to RIFA. Ants are social insects living in a colony composed of up to 1 million ants. Most of the ants in a colony are sterile females, but between spring and summer, fire ants start producing reproductive ants with wings called alates. These alates do nothing but wait around and eat. And when the atmospheric conditions are perfect, all the fire ants all over the world have what is known as a nuptial flight. Each alate mates several times with several partners. After the nuptial flight, all the males die, having completed their only job. The female alates, having lost their virginity, are now called D-alates. The D-alates fly far away from their mother colony, driven by instinct to spread her DNA all over a large area. When she lands, she tears off her wings and looks for a place to dig what is called her claustral cell, which is a sealed-off chamber where the queen will lay her first eggs and begin her colony. Quote, Ants Canada. The nuptial flight usually takes place after a rainstorm, which makes for easy digging. She feeds her young using a soupy substance made from the muscles of her wings. This first stage can last for several weeks, and during the entire time she doesn't eat. The first set of ants to hatch is called ninitics. These workers will burrow out of the claustral cell and forage for food for the queen. She keeps all the sperm from her nuptial flight fresh in an organ called a spermatheca. Eventually, at the same time that she was born, she will start to produce alates of her own. The first stage of an ant life cycle is the egg. An unfertilized egg will develop into a male alate. A fertilized egg will either become a worker fire ant or a female alate. The egg is very small and whitish in hue. It will hatch into a larva in 7 to 10 days. The larva looks like a grain of rice and is constantly licked clean by its sisters. It is helpless and dependent on worker ants for food and care, but it specializes in feeding and growing. Quote, Dusty Ant. During its development, the larva only poops once. Its fecal matter is all stored in a special sac called a meconium. A larva will molt 4 times over the course of a fortnight. Mature larvae will eventually pupate. After several weeks of pupating, it will emerge as an adult fire ant. Queen ants can produce over 1,500 eggs per day. Fire ants are highly advanced social insects. Quote, their societies are hardwired for efficiency and expansion. Quote, National Geographic. They have a caste system where each ant specializes in a specific job. The queen ant specializes in laying eggs, while the male ant's singular job is to fertilize the queens. Fire ants are polymorphic, meaning that they have 2 different castes of workers, the minor workers and the major workers. The major worker is 3 times the size of a minor and specializes in cutting meat, lifting heavy objects, and slicing through bone and other hard metals. The major workers or soldiers can cut through almost anything, making them very hard to contain. The minor workers, called minims, are great for foraging for food, guarding the entrance to the nest, caring for their young, swarming and devouring prey, and even tending to aphids. Since aphids destroy crops, this is one reason why fire ants are regarded as a pest. Aphids emit a sweet secretion called honeydew. Fire ants love this and, quote, milk the aphids for it. Ants communicate through the use of pheromones. Pheromones are a chemical secreted by the ant in their Dufour's gland. They are one of the key factors in the timing for the nuptial flight. They are used to say anything from, I found food, to, help, I'm being attacked. Fire ants use their antennae, which have nerve cells that specialize in touch and smell to detect intricate mixes of pheromones wafting through the air. Fire ants make decisions democratically. If a scout finds a suitable nest site, it will coat the area in pheromones and return to the old nest, leaving a pheromone trail as it goes. This is called a campaign. The scout will find some more workers and go to inspect the nest site. If the other workers approve the nest site, they will leave a pheromone trail of their own to reinforce the original one. Eventually, they will start to bring in their brood or collection of young. Some of the ants might not like the new site, so they will start a campaign of their own, moving the brood back to the original nest site. There can be a moving in campaign and a moving out campaign at the same time. As more and more ants add their own pheromone trail to the more popular campaign, the ants on the other campaign will start to switch campaigns until all the ants are on one campaign. That's just so funny. Solenopsis Geminata is monogynous, meaning that it only tolerates one queen per colony. Solenopsis invicta is both monogynous and polygynous. Polygynous means that they tolerate many queens in one nest. RIFA is what is known as a slaver ant. This means that it will steal other RIFA's young. If a worker ant finds another RIFA's nest, it will just go right inside. If an ant of the other species did this, it would be ripped to shreds in seconds. RIFA cannot recognize one another's scent. The invading RIFA worker searches through the nest until he finds the brood. It will take one of the brood back to its own colony, leaving a pheromone trail on the way. As more and more workers follow this trail to steal the brood, it becomes evident that something is wrong, and the workers of the other colony follow the same pheromone trail back to the first RIFA colony's nest and begin to steal the first colony's brood. As the brood battle goes on, the colony that is bigger and healthier ultimately wins. At some point, most of the workers of the losing colony defect from the colony to join the winning side and start to steal their own sisters. Eventually, the losing queen wanders out of her nest to join the winning colony's nest. The queen will be accepted into the colony and will begin to lay eggs. This can happen multiple times with a single colony, amassing several queens. Eventually, the workers will decide that there are too many queens. They will excommunicate and execute all but one queen, and the whole process starts over again. Insects dropped on the forest floor disappear within 3 minutes, and 100% of them were taken by ants. Quote National Geographic. Ants are a very important part of the decomposition of organic matter. Fire ants are one of the most aggressive kinds of ants. They will attack and sting anything that moves and can quickly swarm and overwhelm most insects and even some reptiles and mammals. They bite only to get a good grip before they start to sting their victim. A single fire ant can sting repeatedly and will continue to do so even after the venom sac has been depleted. Initially, the sting results in a localized, intense burning sensation, hence the name fire ant, followed by a reddening and swelling of the surrounding skin tissue. In some people, the sting may cause a severe systemic allergic reaction, and that's a quote by the Global Invasive Species Database. Fire ants possess an alkaloid venom known as solenopsin. Solenopsis invicta is duly named. Invicta is the Latin for undefeated. They are notorious hunters and scavengers, and their only natural predator is other fire ants. A scouting worker ant wandering around on the forest floor might find a cricket. It will climb onto the cricket and sting it repeatedly. If the cricket throws the scout off and injures it, she will emit a "help" pheromone, and sending all of the nearby fire ants into a frenzy. They swarm it and sting it until it stops moving. Some majors will come in and cut open the cricket's exoskeleton. Ants have 2 stomachs, a social stomach and a private stomach. Some of the ants will fill their social stomachs with hemolymph, or insect blood. They will return to the nest with the insect blood and distribute it to the workers, brood, and queen. They regurgitate it and, through a mouth-to-mouth process called trophallaxis, transfer it from one ant to another. Other ants will work together to bring large sections of the cricket into the nest. Fire ants need a lot of protein for brood development and sugars for energy. They get protein from insects and sugar from aphids, fruit, and human foods such as chocolate. Fire ants are, surprisingly, masters of water. They originated in the South American Amazon jungle floodplains. Their nests are regularly flooded. They will link bodies and create a living raft, and they don't sink because they don't break the surface tension on the water, and they can transport their entire colony, including the queen and the brood, to new nest sites. Whenever they land, they claim the territory as their own. If they happen to brush up against a blade of grass or a small tree, they will create a small tower out of their bodies. Fire ants are one of the only animals capable of building large structures out of their own bodies. These towers are on scale of the Eiffel Tower compared to a fire ant. Since they link up like this, they can be actually tested as a substance, and engineers have classified fire ants as a viscous fluid, meaning that when pressure is applied, they hold their shape, but when something is placed on top of them, it slowly floats to the bottom of the group of ants. Fire ants are masters of architecture. They can build huge mounds where each and every piece of dirt is meticulously placed to make the perfect environment for the brood. Maintenance workers will continuously shift the walls of the nest tunnels to account for humidity, temperature, darkness, and water resistance. Ants are phototropic, meaning that they don't like to nest in the light. In the summer, their nests are much taller than in the winter. The larvae are usually kept in the most humid room, and the pupa are kept in the hottest room. In some cases, fire ants will bring the pupa to the uppermost chambers to bake them in the hot summer sun. If their nest is flooded, they will link legs and make an air bubble that the entire colony can live in comfortably for several hours. Like, even though the entire area is underwater, there's like this ant underwater Atlantis. How cool is that? It's not hard to see why fire ants are one of the most widespread animals on the planet. By itself, a fire ant is not that intelligent, but as a group, they are a force to be reckoned with. They don't labor for themselves, but for the colony as a whole. This makes them one of the most advanced forms of life on the planet. A superorganism. If you made it all the way to the end, I just want to thank you for your interest both in fire ants and my channel. If you want to support my channel by subscribing or pressing any of those other buttons, then yeah, you can do that. Thanks. See you around.